That's what 2.5 centuries of achievement sounds like when it's burning. November 9th, 1940, 3 a.m. Castle Howard, one of England's grandest Baroque palaces, is in flames. The Great Dome, John Vanbrugh's masterpiece, the crown of the building, is collapsing. 200 years of craftsmanship consumed in hours. Approximately 20 rooms destroyed, priceless furniture, paintings, history, gone. But no one dies. The family escapes, the staff escapes, even the 100 schoolgirls living there during wartime evacuation, all safe. The castle survives, barely. And for the next 80 years, the Howard family faces a choice: let it decay into ruin or transform it into something they never imagined, a tourist attraction. This is the story of Castle Howard, not the Brideshead fantasy, not the television romance, the real story. 300 years of power, 3 centuries of one family clinging to an impossible dream, and the moment a fire forced them to choose between preservation and privacy. Most English aristocratic estates didn't survive the 20th century. 400 country houses were demolished between 1945 and 1975, blown up, stripped for parts, erased. Castle Howard survived, but survival meant surrender. The family still lives there, but hundreds of thousands of strangers walk through their home every year. Weddings are held in the Great Hall. Film crews occupy the bedrooms. The gardens host corporate events. The Howards kept their castle, but they lost much of their privacy, their traditional wealth, and any illusion that they truly own it anymore. If you're drawn to stories about impossible architecture, families that refuse to quit, and the moment when survival requires accepting you've lost, please like and subscribe. These investigations take months of research. Your support makes them possible. Thank you for being here. Let's begin where every impossible building begins, with a man who had no idea what he was doing. 1699. A 35-year-old man stands on a hillside in North Yorkshire, looking at ruins. His name is Charles Howard, 3rd Earl of Carlisle. 6 years earlier, 1693, his family's estate at Henderskelth burned down. Medieval house, ancestral seat, gone. Charles needs a replacement. He's 30 years old, inherited the title at 23, and wants something no one can ignore. He hires John Vanbrugh. Here's the problem. John Vanbrugh is a playwright. Not an architect, a writer. He's written comedies, The Relapse, The Provoked Wife, successful plays performed in London theaters. He has designed exactly 0 buildings. Why does Charles hire him? 1. They're friends, both members of the Kit Kat Club, a Whig political and literary society. They drink together, discuss politics. Vanbrugh is charming. 2. Charles wants something radical. Every other aristocrat is hiring established architects. Boring, predictable. Vanbrugh promises something unprecedented. 3. Vanbrugh brings Nicholas Hawksmoor. Hawksmoor is the real architect, trained under Christopher Wren, architect of St. Paul's Cathedral. He's brilliant, technical, precise. The arrangement: Vanbrugh, vision, design, drama. Hawksmoor, engineering, calculations, making it actually stand up. Charles agrees. This is insane. Castle Howard will be the largest private commission in England at the time. Hundreds of thousands of pounds, decades of construction, and Charles is trusting it to a playwright. But Vanbrugh has a vision. The design: Baroque madness. Vanbrugh's plan: a palace, not a house. Not Gothic, old-fashioned, not Palladian, too Italian. Something new. English Baroque. The centerpiece: a massive dome, like St. Paul's Cathedral, but on a private house. Unprecedented. The scale: Main house 145,000 square feet, set in a 1,000-acre landscaped park. The Great Hall rising 70 feet to the dome, wings extending hundreds of feet on either side. Why so big? Power. Charles wants every visitor to understand the Howards are among England's most powerful families. Politics. Charles is a Whig, pro-parliament, anti-absolute monarchy. The house is a political statement, grandeur through architecture, not divine right. Legacy. Charles is building for eternity. This house should last centuries. It will, but not without cost. 1699. Construction begins. The site, hilltop overlooking the Howardian Hills, dramatic, visible for miles. The challenges? 1. No one knows what they're doing. Vanbrugh is learning architecture on the job. He makes mistakes, walls built wrong, redesigns mid-construction. Hawksmoor corrects the engineering, but tensions arise. Vanbrugh wants drama, Hawksmoor wants structural integrity. 2. The costs explode. Original estimate £30,000. Actual cost by 1738, £78,000, equals approximately $18 to $22 million in today's money. Calculation methods vary, but this represents the enormous scale of investment. Charles is wealthy, income from estates across England, but this is consuming everything. 3. It takes forever. 1606, family moves in. The house is nowhere near finished. They live in the east wing while construction continues around them. Dust, noise, workers everywhere. But Charles insists he wants to see it completed in his lifetime. 1712, the Great Hall is finished. The dome crowns the building. It's spectacular. 70 feet high, painted ceilings, light flooding through windows in the dome. Visitors gasp when entering. This is what Charles wanted, awe. But the house isn't done. 1731. Charles begins the West Wing. Symmetry, balance, another massive extension. He's 62 years old. He knows he's running out of time. The race. Can he finish before he dies? 1738. Charles Howard, 3rd Earl of Carlisle, dies, age 69. The West Wing is incomplete. The house is still unfinished. But he's created something no one can ignore. Castle Howard dominates the landscape, one of the largest private houses in northern England, a monument to ambition. His son, Henry Howard, 4th Earl, inherits, and the burden of finishing it. Henry Howard, 4th Earl, 1694 to 1758. Henry completes the West Wing, adds gardens, commissions the Temple of the Four Winds, 1738, a garden folly designed by Vanbrugh, his final work before death. 1742, Hawksmoor designs the Mausoleum, a massive domed structure in the grounds, Howard family burial site, classical, imposing. Hawksmoor dies before it's finished, 1744, but it's completed by others. By 1758, when Henry dies, Castle Howard is essentially complete. The 18th century vision realized. Frederick Howard, 5th Earl, 1748 to 1825, the collector. Frederick inherits 1758 at age 10, comes of age in the 1760s. He's wealthy, he's cultured, he goes on the grand tour, aristocratic tradition, travel Europe, buy art. He returns with paintings, old masters, Italian, Flemish, Dutch works, sculptures, classical Roman and Greek reproductions, furniture, French, Italian, books, rare manuscripts, first editions. He fills Castle Howard, room after room, galleries, libraries. By 1800, Castle Howard contains one of England's finest private art collections, works by major European artists, though the exact attributions of which specific paintings were acquired when aren't always comprehensively documented. This will matter later, because in 1940, many of these works burn. Notable visitors in 18th and 19th centuries. Throughout its early history, Castle Howard attracted notable figures. Artists. J.M.W. Turner sketched the house and grounds in the early 1800s. His watercolors captured the estate's romantic grandeur. Writers. Horace Walpole visited and praised the architecture in his letters, calling it a palace, a town, a fortified city. Royalty. Various members of the British royal family visited over the decades. Though Castle Howard was never a royal residence, it was grand enough to host kings. Politicians. As a Whig political family, the Howards hosted influential politicians, cabinet ministers, and intellectual figures of the Georgian era. These visits reinforced Castle Howard, not just a private home, but a cultural landmark. 1825 to 1911, Victorian stability and excess. The 19th century is Castle Howard's golden age. The family. George Howard, 6th Earl, 1773 to 1848, Whig politician. George Howard, 7th Earl, 1802 to 1864, continued politics. William Howard, 8th Earl, 1808 to 1889, quiet management. George Howard, 9th Earl, 1843 to 1911, artist and collector. The 9th Earl is significant. Trained painter, pre-Raphaelite style, married Rosalind Stanley, daughter of Lord Stanley of Alderley, had 9 children, expanded collections further. Castle Howard at its peak, fully staffed, fully operational. The staff, 1900, 40-plus indoor servants, 60-plus outdoor staff, gardeners, grooms, footmen, 100-plus people employed by the estate. This is the apex, but World War I is coming, and the world that sustained Castle Howard is about to end. August 1914, Britain enters World War I. Impact on Castle Howard. 1. The men leave. Estate workers enlist, gardeners, grooms, footmen, gone to France. 2. Wartime use. Like many great houses, parts of Castle Howard were offered for wartime purposes, though the extent of military use isn't comprehensively documented. What's certain, the house could no longer operate as it had before the war. 3. Income collapses. Agricultural rents drop, wartime economy. Estate income plummets. 4. Death. Members of the Howard family serve, some don't return. 1918, war ends, but the world has changed. Post-war crisis, servants, taxes, collapse. 1918 to 1920s, the servant problem. Men who went to war don't want to return to service. Better jobs available, better pay. Staffing drops from 100 to 30 to 40. The tax problem. Estate taxes, death duties introduced after World War I rose dramatically. By the 1940s, rates could reach 70 to 80% in some cases, particularly on the largest estates. Every time an earl died, the estate faced massive tax bills. How do aristocracy families pay? Sell land, sell art, sell contents. Castle Howard begins selling. Outlying farms sold, some paintings sold, land gradually reduced. This is the pattern across England. Most families can't survive it. 1911. George Howard, 9th Earl, dies. His son, Charles Howard, 10th Earl, inherits. 1912. Charles, 10th Earl, dies suddenly, age 45. His son, Charles Howard, 11th Earl, inherits at age 17. This is the man who will witness the fire. Charles Howard, 11th Earl, 1995 to 1963. Charles grows up at Castle Howard. World War I, serves in military, 1914 to 1918. 1920s to 1930s, manages estate, struggles financially, estate taxes from father's death, reduced income. 1930s, Castle Howard is increasingly difficult to maintain. The dome needs repairs, leaks developing, but no money for major work. 1939, World War II begins. The government approaches. Can Castle Howard house evacuees? Charles agrees. September 9, 1939, Queen Margaret's School, girls' boarding school from Scarborough, evacuates to Castle Howard. Approximately 100 girls plus staff move in. Why evacuate? Scarborough is coastal, vulnerable to bombing, naval attacks. Castle Howard is inland, safer. The arrangement. School pays rent, helps Charles financially. School occupies East Wing and central areas. Howard family lives in a small portion of the West Wing. For a year, this works. Life during wartime, 1939 to 1945. 100 schoolgirls living in a Baroque palace. Classrooms in staterooms, dormitories in bedrooms where earls once slept. The girls remembered the Great Hall as assembly room, playing in the gardens when permitted, rationed food served in formal dining rooms, air raid drills, though Castle Howard was never targeted. For many girls, this was the grandest building they'd ever seen. For the Howard family, it was a house overrun by children. Strange coexistence, an aristocratic family living in a small wing while their home became a school. Then came November 9, 1940. November 9, 1940, approximately 3 a.m. Someone smells smoke. The fire starts in the southeast dome area. Cause? Electrical fault. Faulty wiring in the dome structure. Official investigation confirms this. Why so devastating? 1. World War II equals limited fire response. Fire brigades stretched thin, many firefighters serving in the military, equipment limited. 2. Water supply inadequate. Castle Howard's water comes from wells and estate sources, not sufficient pressure for fighting major fire. 3. The building itself. Wooden beams, oak paneling, centuries-old dry timber, once ignited, spreads fast. 4. The dome design. Dome creates chimney effect, draws fire upward, intensifies heat. 3 to 7 a.m., evacuation and destruction. 3 a.m., fire discovered. Staff and students evacuate immediately. 100 schoolgirls led out into the cold November night in nightgowns, terrified. Charles Howard and family evacuate. Staff attempt to save items, paintings, furniture, valuables. They save some. Most valuable paintings removed, some furniture dragged out, but the fire is too fast. By 4 a.m., fire engulfs the dome completely. 5 a.m., dome collapses inward, crashes through the Great Hall. 200 years of Vanbrugh's masterpiece, gone in seconds. 6 to 7 a.m., fire spreads to southeast wing. Approximately 20 rooms destroyed or gutted. Garden hall gutted. Roof collapses in sections. Local fire brigades arrive. Too late. Too little equipment. They focus on preventing spread to the west wing. By morning, fire mostly contained. The damage: Great Dome, completely destroyed. Great Hall, open to the sky, floor covered in debris. Southeast wing, approximately 20 rooms destroyed or gutted. Paintings, furniture, books, significant losses, though most important works were saved during evacuation. Total damage, £500,000, 1940,
equals approximately £28 million today. Casualties? 0. Everyone evacuated safely. November 10, 1940. The aftermath. November 10, 1940. Charles Howard stands in the ruins. The dome, the defining feature of Castle Howard, the vision his ancestor commissioned 240 years earlier, is gone. The Great Hall is a shell, open to the sky, rain falling onto debris. But the West Wing survived, damaged but standing. The question, can it be saved? Should it be saved? The money doesn't exist. World War II is raging. Britain is fighting for survival. Materials are rationed. Labor is scarce. There's no money to rebuild a private palace. Charles makes a decision. Stabilize what's left. Prevent further collapse, but don't rebuild. Not yet. Maybe never. What happened to the debris? The collapsed dome materials, tons of stone, timber, lead roofing, were partially cleared for safety. Immediate priorities: remove unstable masonry that threatened further collapse, clear pathways for access, protect West Wing from weather damage. Some salvageable materials were stored on estate grounds. Stone blocks, lead, valuable, could be sold or reused. Carved elements that survived. The Great Hall remained open to the sky. Tarpaulins covered areas during worst weather. But for 22 years, rain poured through. Snow accumulated in winter. Visitors to the estate, during the limited years before public opening, could see the ruin, a stark, dramatic reminder of what the fire had destroyed. The dome's absence changed Castle Howard's silhouette entirely. The dome remains a ruin for the next 22 years.
1940 to 1945, the war years. Queen Margaret's School stays. Despite the fire, the West Wing is habitable. The school continues operating. Charles continues receiving rent. This rent is essential. Without it, Charles can't afford even basic maintenance. 1945. War ends. The school leaves, returns to Scarborough. When the girls departed, Castle Howard was suddenly quiet again, empty, half-ruined, the dome still a gaping wound. Charles faces the question, what now? Charles is alone in a half-ruined palace. The post-war crisis. 1945 to 1950. Estate taxes are brutal. Death duties could reach 70 to 80% in some cases. Every aristocratic family faces this threat. Most sell everything. Between 1945 and 1975, over 400 English country houses are demolished. Families can't afford upkeep, can't pay taxes, can't find buyers. Solution? Demolish. Sell the land. Charles refuses to demolish Castle Howard, but he has no money to maintain it properly. The dome remains a ruin. Rain pours through. The Great Hall is unusable. Rooms that survived the fire deteriorate from neglect. What can he do? 1952. Charles makes a decision that changes everything. He opens Castle Howard to paying visitors. This is radical. In 1952, most aristocratic families consider this vulgar, degrading. Your home is private. You don't charge admission like a museum. But Charles has no choice. April 1952, Castle Howard opens for public tours. Entrance fee, 2 shillings 6 pence, approximately £5 today. What visitors see? West Wing, undamaged rooms, staterooms, library, gallery. Gardens, Temple of the Four Winds, mausoleum. What they don't see, the Great Hall, still a ruin, the collapsed dome, fire-damaged sections, too dangerous. First year, estimated about 20,000 visitors. Revenue enough to cover basic maintenance. This is survival. Charles gives up privacy, but keeps the house. 1960s, economic recovery. Charles has saved some money from tourism. Decision: rebuild the dome. But not exactly as it was. The reconstruction, 1962 to early 1970s. Timeline note: sources vary slightly on exact completion year. Work began 1962, confirmed across multiple sources. Completion occurred in the early 1970s. Most sources cite between 1970 and 1972. Christopher Ridgway's authoritative Castle Howard, Yale University Press, 2010, references early 1970s without specifying an exact year. Architect: Jeffrey Beard, specialist in historic buildings. The challenge: original plans exist, but exact reconstruction would cost millions. Solution: build simplified version. Differences: simpler internal structure, steel supports, not original timber framing, slightly smaller, less ornate decoration, modern materials where possible, but external appearance closely matched. Cost: approximately £200,000, 1960s, equals roughly £4 million today. Funded by: tourism revenue, accumulated over 10 years, private Howard family funds, some grants, historic preservation bodies. Early 1970s, new dome completed. It looks similar from outside, but it's not the same. The original Vanbrugh Foxmoor dome is gone forever. Purists noted the differences, but for most visitors, the silhouette was restored. Castle Howard looks whole again.
1963. Charles Howard, 11th Earl of Carlisle, dies, age 68. Who inherits? Here's where it gets complicated. The inheritance split. The Earldom of Carlisle, the title, goes to a cousin. George Howard becomes 12th Earl of Carlisle. But Castle Howard itself goes to George Howard, different George, descendant through female line. Why the split? Estate tax platting. To avoid massive taxes on each succession, the family legally separated the title from the property. The castle passes through a trust structure, not direct inheritance with the title. This minimizes taxes, but it's complicated. George Howard, who inherits the castle, not the earl title, faces the same problems. Massive maintenance costs. Tourism helps, but barely covers expenses. Ongoing repairs needed. House still half empty, fire-damaged areas still not fully restored. 1970s. Tourism grows slowly, but not enough. George needs something bigger, something transformative. He gets it in 1981. 1981. Granada Television approaches George Howard. They're adapting Evelyn Waugh's Brideshead Revisited for television. They want to film at Castle Howard. The deal: Granada pays location fees. Filming disrupts tourism. Castle closed during shoots, but publicity will be enormous. George agrees. Filming 1980 to 1981. Cast: Jeremy Irons as Charles Ryder, Anthony Andrews as Sebastian Flight, Claire Bloom, Laurence Olivier, John Gielgud as supporting. Filmed extensively at Castle Howard. Great Hall, restored dome visible, staterooms, gardens, exterior shots dominating the series. 11 episodes, broadcast October-December 1981. Impact: explosive. Brideshead becomes a cultural phenomenon. Critical acclaim: 13 million viewers in UK. International broadcast, PBS in US, and global distribution. Castle Howard becomes synonymous with Brideshead. Tourism impact. Note:
Castle Howard Estate Limited doesn't publish exact historical visitor statistics. The following estimates are based on contemporary news coverage, estate management interviews, and comparison with similar estates that experienced TV effects. Estimated visitor numbers. 1980, pre-Brideshead, 150,000 visitors annually, estimated, based on 1970s tourism growth trends and admission revenue indicators. 1982, post-Brideshead, 300,000 plus visitors annually, estimated. The increase, tourism approximately doubled within 2 years of the series broadcast. These estimates are based on contemporary news coverage reporting dramatic increases in Castle Howard tourism, interviews with estate management citing doubling of visitor numbers, and comparison with other estates that experienced similar impacts, e.g. Alnwick Castle after Harry Potter fills, Highclere Castle after Downton Abbey. What's confirmed across all sources? Brideshead Revisited had a transformative impact on Castle Howard's tourism and finances. Visitor numbers increased dramatically, revenue grew proportionally, and the estate's finances stabilized for the first time since 1940 fire. Revenue increased substantially. For the first time since 1940, Castle Howard is financially stable. The Brideshead effect saves the estate. 2008, the film version. 2008, feature film adaptation of Brideshead Revisited. Also filmed partly at Castle Howard. Less cultural impact than the 1981 series, but maintains visibility. By 2008, Castle Howard is established as a tourist destination independent of Brideshead, but the association remains. Castle Howard Estate Limited is a private company. Unlike public organizations or national trust properties, they are not required to disclose detailed financial information, exact visitor statistics, or internal operations data. Throughout this investigation, financial figures and visitor numbers are estimates based on publicly available information, admission prices, event packages, employee counts, industry standards for similar heritage estates, comparative analysis with estates of similar size and operation, historical sources, and contemporary reporting. Where exact figures are available from authoritative sources, dates, historical events, architectural details, they are presented as fact. Where figures are estimated, they are labeled as such. This transparency ensures you understand which information is verified and which is reasoned estimation based on available evidence. Post-Brideshead, Castle Howard is no longer just a house, it's a brand. What changes 1981 to 2024? 1. Professionalization. Before 1981, family-run operation, limited staff, informal tours. After 1981, professional management, marketing department, event coordinators, gift shop managers. Castle Howard Estate Limited, private company, is formalized. Board of directors, annual budgets, strategic planning. This isn't a home with tourists, it's a business with a family living in it. 2. Diversification. Revenue streams, 1980s to 2024. Admissions, house tours, garden tours, primary revenue. Events, weddings, Great Hall available for hire, can accommodate 120 guests. Corporate events, product launches, conferences. Christmas markets, annual event, draws tens of thousands of visitors. Outdoor concerts, summer series. Filming, Brideshead, 1981-2008. The Buccaneers, BBC, 1995. Victoria, ITV, 2016 to 2019. Death Comes to Pemberley, BBC, 2013. Numerous commercials, music videos, photo shoots. Retail, gift shop, Castle Howard branded merchandise. Plant center, garden plants, seeds. Farm shop, produce from Castle Howard Farms. Hospitality, cafe, serves hundreds of thousands of customers annually. Catering for events. Farmland,
2,000+ acres still actively farmed, grain, livestock, rental income from tenant farmers. Staff expansion. 1980, around 30 staff, gardeners, tour guides, maintenance. 2024, 200+ employees, year-round plus seasonal. Roles include tour guides, 12+, event coordinators, 5+, marketing and PR team, 4+, maintenance crew, 20+, gardeners, 15+, retail and hospitality staff, 80+, admin and management, 15+, security, cleaning, farm workers. Castle Howard is now one of North Yorkshire's largest private employers. The financial reality, 2020s. Annual visitor numbers, 2019, pre-COVID, estimated 300,000 to 500,000 annually. Castle Howard Estate Limited doesn't publish exact visitor statistics publicly. This estimate is based on admission prices, reported revenue indicators, comparison with similar-sized estates like Chatsworth and Blenheim Palace, and observable capacity during peak seasons. Breakdown, estimated. House tour visitors, 150,000 to 250,000. Garden-only visitors, 150,000 to 250,000. Admission prices, 2024, publicly listed. House and gardens, £20 to £25, adults. Gardens only, £12 to £15. Children, £10 to £12.
Financial operations, the reality. Castle Howard Estate Ltd. is a private company and doesn't disclose exact financial figures. However, heritage estates of similar size and visitor numbers typically operate on very tight margins. What we can estimate based on publicly available information. Admission prices are publicly listed, $20 to $25 for house plus gardens. Wedding and event packages are advertised, $8,000 to $15,000 plus for venue hire. Staff numbers are observable, 200+ employees confirmed. Visitor estimates are based on capacity and comparative estates. The financial pattern for estates like Castle Howard. Revenue comes from multiple streams. Admissions, largest single source. Events and weddings, high margin but weather and season dependent. Filming, variable, can be substantial but unpredictable. Retail and hospitality, modest margins. Farmland, steady but relatively small. Costs are substantial. Staff salaries, 200+ employees, estimated $4 to $5 million annually based on heritage sector averages. Maintenance, historic buildings of this scale typically require 2 to 3% of replacement value annually. Utilities, heating 145,000 square feet Georgian and Baroque building. Insurance, substantial for historic property with public access. Marketing and operations. Heritage industry sources suggest estates of this scale typically need $10 million annually just to break even. The goal isn't profit, it's preservation. The Howard family doesn't generate significant personal wealth from Castle Howard. They preserve it. That's their return on ownership. The Visitor Experience, 2024. What does opening to the public actually mean? A typical visit to Castle Howard. House tour, 60 to 90 minutes. Great Hall, visitors enter under the restored dome, look up 70 feet to painted ceiling. Long gallery, parental portraits, period furniture. Chapel, Baroque ceiling, ornate decorations. Museum rooms, costume collection, historical displays about the house and family. Antique passage, furniture, decorative arts from various periods. Selected bedrooms, historically furnished, roped off to prevent touching. Gardens, 1 to 3 hours. Ray Wood, woodland garden with 18th century follies and rare plants. Walled garden, flowers, vegetables, orderly beds. Temple of the Four Winds, Vanbrugh's garden building on hilltop, panoramic views. Mausoleum, Howard family burial site, usually viewable from exterior only. South Lake, ornamental lake with waterfowl. Various walking paths through landscaped parkland. Not open to public, families' private apartments, Nicholas Howard's residence in West Wing, service areas and staff quarters, some upper floors, structural or conservation reasons, estate offices. Total visit time, 2 to 4 hours typically, though serious enthusiasts can spend a full day. Visitor descriptions from reviews and visitor feedback. Breathtaking, overwhelming scale, beautifully maintained, gardens are stunning, but also slightly sad knowing the family can't enjoy their own home privately. Feels like a living museum. This is the reality. Hundreds of thousands of strangers walking through rooms where a family still lives. Opening Castle Howard to the public saved it financially. But what did it cost the Howard family? 1. Privacy. Before 1952, private residence. Family had the entire house, guests by invitation only. After 1952, public 200+ days per year. What this means? Visitors walking through your home. State rooms where family dinners happened. Bedrooms, historical ones, not current family bedrooms, those remain private. Galleries, library. Strangers everywhere. Despite do not touch signs, visitors lean on furniture, touch walls, wear down carpets with sheer volume. Living on a schedule, can't use certain rooms during tour hours, can't have family gatherings in the Great Hall, it's booked for weddings months in advance. No spontaneity, everything planned around public access, family activities scheduled around tour times, event bookings, filming schedules. Current owner Nicholas Howard, born 1952, lives in private apartments in one wing. Not the grand staterooms, not the Great Hall, not the galleries filled with family art. Those are for tourists. In interviews over the years, he's expressed the reality of this situation. From Country Life in 2019, one doesn't really own a place like this. One looks after it for the next generation. This sentiment, living as custodian rather than owner, reflects the fundamental loss of traditional privacy and ownership that comes with opening a historic home to the public. The family accepted this trade, privacy for preservation.
2. Wealth. The Howard family was wealthy. 19th century. Income from thousands of acres of farmland, art collection worth millions, no estate taxes, staff of 100+. 20th century, systematic destruction of wealth. Estate taxes, death duties. 1920s to 1940s rose from 40% to potentially 70 to 80% in extreme cases. Each generation lost substantial wealth to taxes. Land sold to pay taxes, thousands of acres sold off over decades. Art sold, paintings, furniture, family heirlooms went to auction. Maintenance costs. Before tourism income, Castle Howard was a financial drain, estimated £100,000+ a year to maintain, 1950s to 1970s, equivalent to several million today. Estate income couldn't cover it. By the 1980s, the family wasn't traditionally wealthy anymore. They owned Castle Howard, but that's different from being rich. The house is an asset they can't sell, emotionally, practically, legally complex, and can't afford to keep without tourists. Nicholas Howard's situation, 2024. He owns Castle Howard through family trust structures, but his life is more like that of a full-time estate manager than a traditional wealthy landowner. Income flows through trust structures designed to minimize taxes and ensure estate preservation. He's not unpaid, but he's not living a lavish, aristocratic lifestyle either. He's asset-rich, owns a £150 million property, but operates on tight budgets for both the estate and personal living. He can't sell it. Family would disown him. Public outcry, historic preservation laws make it nearly impossible. Profit significantly from it, revenue covers operational costs. Live in the grand rooms, they're for tourists. Stop working, managing the estate is full-time. Walk away, moral obligation to ancestors and descendants. Traditional aristocratic wealth, Gone. What remains? The responsibility. 3. Control. Before tourism, the family controlled everything. When to open rooms, who visits, what's displayed, how the house operates. After tourism, control is shared or lost. Historic England, government heritage body, has oversight. They can mandate preservation work, restrict changes to historic fabric, require compliance with conservation standards. Health and safety regulations must meet modern building codes for public access, fire exits and suppression systems, accessibility, wheelchair ramps, lifts, necessary but sometimes conflicts with historic integrity. Wedding or event contracts. Once you rent out the Great Hall for weddings, you lose control of your family's historic dining room. Strangers dance where your ancestors held state dinners. Filming. Productions pay well, £50,000 to £500,000 plus, depending on scale, but they take over. Furniture moved, lighting rigs installed throughout rooms, crews of 50 to 100 plus people. Disrupts tourism schedule. Family must vacate certain areas. The family makes compromises constantly. Every decision is a negotiation. Preserve historic authenticity versus generate necessary income. Maintain family privacy versus meet public expectations. Follow conservation rules versus make practical operational changes. Control of your ancestral home, shared with government regulators, paying visitors, event clients, and film producers. 4. Identity. Who are the Howards now? Before 20th century, aristocratic family, Earls of Carlisle, landowners controlling tens of thousands of acres, political influencers, social elite. Now, estate managers, tourism operators, event coordinators, heritage custodians. The title, Earl of Carlisle, went to a different family branch in 1963. Nicholas Howard doesn't hold it. He's not an earl, not a lord, just Nicholas Howard, owner of Castle Howard, but defined by that ownership, not by political influence, not by vast wealth, not by social status. He manages a tourist attraction that happens to be his family's 300-year-old home. His identity is inseparable from the estate. His descendants will inherit the same burden, or they won't, which brings us to the biggest question. Nicholas Howard was born in 1952. He's 72 years old as of 2024. Succession. Nicholas Howard has heirs, family members who will inherit Castle Howard through the established trust structures. The family maintains privacy regarding specific succession plans and individual family members' names, as is common with British aristocratic families managing heritage properties. What is known is that Castle Howard will pass to the next generation of the Howard family. Whether that next generation will choose to continue operating it as the family has since 1952, tourism-based model, remains uncertain. Each generation faces the same choice: accept the burden of preservation or seek alternative arrangements. The burden of inheritance. What inheriting Castle Howard means is 1. You become responsible for a 145,000 square foot historic building, constant maintenance, conservation requirements, 1,000 acres of landscaped grounds requiring 15+ professional gardeners, 200+ employees, livelihoods depend on estate operations, multi-million-pound annual operational costs, public expectations, hundreds of thousands of visitors annually expect perfection, historic preservation obligations, can't neglect, can't substantially alter. 2. You can't profit significantly. Revenue covers costs. The goal is preservation, not wealth generation. 3. You lose privacy. Your home is a public attraction, forever. 4. You work essentially full-time. Managing the estate requires constant attention. It's not a passive investment. 5. You can never truly sell it. Legally, you might be able to, complex trust structures, but practically, Socially, emotionally, you'd be the Howard who lost Castle Howard after 325 years, the family member who failed the legacy. The pressure is immense.
The next generation's dilemma. The next generation has grown up at Castle Howard, or with close knowledge of its demands. They've seen constant work required, tourists walking through family spaces, financial stress when major repairs arise, roof work, structural issues, hundreds of thousands of pounds. Zero significant personal wealth despite owning a $150 million property. Privacy sacrificed for preservation. Do they want this? Some children of historic estate owners embrace it. Some don't. Examples across British estates: Chatsworth, Duke of Devonshire; Peregrine Cavendish, 12th Duke, inherited and committed. His son, the Earl of Burlington, heir, appears committed to continuing. Blenheim Palace, Duke of Marlborough; Jamie Spencer Churchill, 12th Duke, inherited 2014, continues operations, but has mentioned in interviews the burden of maintaining Britain's largest inhabited private house. Longleat, Marquis of Bath; Sealand Thynne, 8th Marquis, inherited 2020, continues tourism safari park operations, but publicly discussed the weight of responsibility. The pattern: many heirs accept the burden, but increasingly next generations question whether they want this life. Options for future generations. Option 1. Continue family ownership and operation. Next generation accepts the burden. Castle Howard remains Howard-owned, tourism-operated. Likelihood: probable for immediate next generation, Nicholas's heirs. Less certain, generation after that, Nicholas's grandchildren, who may be 40 to 50 years from inheriting. Option 2. Transfer to National Trust. National Trust, UK charity, manages 200-plus historic properties nationwide. The arrangement: trust takes ownership, professional staff operate property, opens to the public, usually more days per year than private ownership. Family relieved of financial burden. Pros: property preserved in perpetuity, professional conservation and management, family freed from financial responsibility. Cons: family loses ownership after 325 years. National Trust may change operations, interpretation, and access policies. Family typically loses the right to live there, though limited residence rights can sometimes be negotiated. Precedent: many aristocratic families have transferred properties to National Trust. Waddesdon Manor, Rothschild family, transferred 1957, family maintains close involvement. Cliveden, Astor family. Fountains Abbey and Studley Royal, Viner family. Hundreds of others. Could Nicholas or his heirs negotiate residence rights? Possibly. Some National Trust properties have arrangements where the family retains limited living quarters, but it's no longer their house, it's the nation's house. Option 3. Sell to private buyer. Legally possible, depending on exact trust structure. Who would buy? Foreign billionaire, though political climate and sanctions have reduced this pool. Luxury hospitality company, convert to ultra-luxury hotel. Institution, university, museum, cultural foundation. Estimated market value 150 to 200 million pounds if permitted to sell on the open market, but practical barriers. Public outcry would be massive. Howard sell Castle Howard after 325 years, a national news scandal. Historic preservation laws, Grade 1 listed building, government can restrict sale to unsuitable buyers. Family pressure, internal family dynamics, other Howard relatives might fight the sale. Politically, socially, nearly impossible in current climate. Option 4. Hybrid model, family ownership with professional management. The compromise: family retains legal ownership through trusts, leases operations to a professional heritage management company. Company runs the day-to-day, tourism, staffing, maintenance. Family receives modest income, but primary goal remains preservation. Family may retain limited residence rights. Precedent: some estates operate this way.
Advantages: family keeps ownership, reduces direct operational burden, management company may be more efficient. Disadvantages: less family control. Management company must be profitable, might prioritize income over conservation. Family still legally and morally responsible.
The next generation's dilemma. The next generation has grown up at Castle Howard, or with close knowledge of its demands. They've seen constant work required, tourists walking through family spaces, financial stress when major repairs arise, roof work, structural issues, hundreds of thousands of pounds. Zero significant personal wealth despite owning a $150 million property. Privacy sacrificed for preservation. Do they want this? Some children of historic estate owners embrace it. Some don't. Examples across British estates: Chatsworth, Duke of Devonshire; Peregrine Cavendish, 12th Duke, inherited and committed. His son, the Earl of Burlington, heir, appears committed to continuing. Blenheim Palace, Duke of Marlborough; Jamie Spencer Churchill, 12th Duke, inherited 2014, continues operations, but has mentioned in interviews the burden of maintaining Britain's largest inhabited private house. Longleat, Marquis of Bath; Sealand Thynne, 8th Marquis, inherited 2020, continues tourism safari park operations, but publicly discussed the weight of responsibility. The pattern: many heirs accept the burden, but increasingly next generations question whether they want this life. Options for future generations. Option 1. Continue family ownership and operation. Next generation accepts the burden. Castle Howard remains Howard-owned, tourism-operated. Likelihood: probable for immediate next generation, Nicholas's heirs. Less certain, generation after that, Nicholas's grandchildren, who may be 40 to 50 years from inheriting. Option 2. Transfer to National Trust. National Trust, UK charity, manages 200-plus historic properties nationwide. The arrangement: trust takes ownership, professional staff operate property, opens to the public, usually more days per year than private ownership. Family relieved of financial burden. Pros: property preserved in perpetuity, professional conservation and management, family freed from financial responsibility. Cons: family loses ownership after 325 years. National Trust may change operations, interpretation, and access policies. Family typically loses the right to live there, though limited residence rights can sometimes be negotiated. Precedent: many aristocratic families have transferred properties to National Trust. Waddesdon Manor, Rothschild family, transferred 1957, family maintains close involvement. Cliveden, Astor family. Fountains Abbey and Studley Royal, Viner family. Hundreds of others. Could Nicholas or his heirs negotiate residence rights? Possibly. Some National Trust properties have arrangements where the family retains limited living quarters, but it's no longer their house, it's the nation's house. Option 3. Sell to private buyer. Legally possible, depending on exact trust structure. Who would buy? Foreign billionaire, though political climate and sanctions have reduced this pool. Luxury hospitality company, convert to ultra-luxury hotel. Institution, university, museum, cultural foundation. Estimated market value 150 to 200 million pounds if permitted to sell on the open market, but practical barriers. Public outcry would be massive. Howard sell Castle Howard after 325 years, a national news scandal. Historic preservation laws, Grade 1 listed building, government can restrict sale to unsuitable buyers. Family pressure, internal family dynamics, other Howard relatives might fight the sale. Politically, socially, nearly impossible in current climate. Option 4. Hybrid model, family ownership with professional management. The compromise: family retains legal ownership through trusts, leases operations to a professional heritage management company. Company runs the day-to-day, tourism, staffing, maintenance. Family receives modest income, but primary goal remains preservation.
Family may retain limited residence rights. Precedent: some estates operate this way. Advantages: family keeps ownership, reduces direct operational burden, management company may be more efficient. Disadvantages: less family control. Management company must be profitable, might prioritize income over conservation. Family still legally and morally responsible.
Most likely scenario, 2024 analysis. Short term, next 10 to 20 years. Next generation of Howard family inherits. Continues current operational model, tourism, events, filming, etc. Medium term, 20 to 40 years. Professional management lease or partial national trust involvement becomes likely. Family ownership continues, but operational burden shifts. Long term, 50-plus years. National trust transfer most likely if future generations decide burden is unsustainable. Almost certainly not sale to private buyer, politically or socially nearly impossible. Demolition, legally protected, would never be permitted. Abandonment would trigger government intervention. Castle Howard will survive. The building is too important historically, architecturally, culturally. But Howard family ownership beyond the next generation or two? Less certain. 1945, 1975, over 400 English country houses demolished. Demolished, not sold, not converted, destroyed. Why? Estate taxes made them financially impossible. No buyers wanted them, too expensive to maintain. Families gave up. Examples of demolished houses: Clumber Park, Nottinghamshire, Duke of Newcastle's seat, 360 rooms, demolished 1938, too expensive to maintain, no viable use found. Eaton Hall, Cheshire, Duke of Westminster's Victorian mansion, partially demolished 1961, rebuilt much smaller, original house unsustainable. Hamilton Palace, Scotland, demolished 1921, mining subsidence damaged structure, costs too high to repair. Dozens upon dozens of others, gone entirely. Castle Howard survived. Why? Reason 1. Opened early, 1952. Castle Howard opened to the public in 1952. This was early compared to most estates. Many didn't open until 1970s, 1980s, when financial desperation left no choice. By then, the market was saturated with heritage tourism options. By opening in 1952, established tourism infrastructure before heavy competition, built steady visitor base over decades, generated revenue for nearly 30 years before Brideshead windfall amplified success. First mover advantage mattered. Reason 2, the Brideshead windfall, 1981. Timing and luck. Granada Television could have filmed Brideshead Revisited at numerous locations. They chose Castle Howard. The 1981 TV series transformed the estate's finances. Visitor numbers approximately doubled within 2 years. Revenue increased proportionally. Without Brideshead, Castle Howard might have struggled financially through 1980s and 1990s economic downturns, might have faced forced national trust transfer or partial sale. The timing was extraordinarily fortunate. Reason 3. No catastrophic succession crisis. Many estates failed due to succession disasters. No male heirs under primogeniture, eldest son inherits. If no sons, title goes to distant cousin who may not care about the property. Property might pass to daughter but face punitive taxes. Families split, fought legally over ownership. Properties deteriorated during disputes. Castle Howard avoided this. Each generation had heirs willing or obligated to accept responsibility. Even when titles split from property, 1963, ownership structure remained coherent. Succession was complex, trust structures, tax planning, but never chaotic. Reason 4. Diversification of revenue. Castle Howard didn't rely solely on admissions. Multiple revenue streams: tourism, admissions, events, weddings, high margin, corporate events,
Filming, variable but substantial when it occurs. Retail, gift shop, plant center. Hospitality, cafe, catering. Farmland, steady if modest. Estates that relied solely on admissions often failed. One bad tourism season, weather, economy, competition, equals financial crisis. Castle Howard spread risk across diverse income sources. Reason 5. Geographic location. North Yorkshire advantages. Beautiful countryside, moors, dales, dramatic landscapes. Accessible from major cities. York, 30 miles, major tourist city. Leeds, 45 miles. Manchester, 90 miles. Part of established tourist region. York Minster, Yorkshire Dales National Park, historic towns. Remote houses struggled massively. Far northern Scotland, remote Wales, isolated locations, hard to attract consistent visitor numbers, can't survive on occasional tourists. Castle Howard had built-in geographic advantages. Reason 6. Architectural drama. Castle Howard is spectacular. The dome, the Baroque grandeur, the scale, the landscaped parkland. It photographs beautifully, perfect for film and television. Visitors are genuinely impressed. Even after seeing photos, arriving in person is breathtaking. Compared to plain Georgian boxes, elegant but not dramatic. Victorian Gothic, impressive but often dark, less photogenic. Castle Howard's Baroque drama equals marketability. Word of mouth, repeat visitors, film location desirability.
Detailed comparison. Castle Howard versus other survivors. Understanding Castle Howard's survival requires comparing to other successful estates. Chatsworth, Derbyshire. Opened to public 1949, earlier than Castle Howard. Devonshire family wealth, substantial beyond the house. Investments, London properties, art. Art collection, world-class, Rembrandts, Van Dycks. Touring exhibitions generate additional income. Advantages, greater financial resources, multiple income streams beyond estate. Result, thrived. Family remains comparatively wealthy. Duke lives comfortably. Blenheim Palace, Oxfordshire. Opened 1950. Churchill connection. Birthplace of Winston Churchill. UNESCO World Heritage Site 1987. Visitor numbers, 800,000 plus annually, significantly higher than Castle Howard. Advantages, UNESCO status. Churchill legacy draws massive international tourism. Result, highly profitable. Family financially secure. Castle Howard, opened 1952. No UNESCO status, though architecturally significant. No equivalent famous association until Brideshead 1981. Visitor numbers, estimated 300,000 to 500,000. Substantial but below Chatsworth or Blenheim. Result, survived, financially stable, but tighter margins than Chatsworth or Blenheim. Castle Howard's path was harder, less inherent fame, no Churchill, smaller financial cushion, no UNESCO designation bringing guaranteed tourism. Castle Howard had to work harder for each visitor. Opening early helped. Brideshead was crucial. Diversification mattered, but it's still more financially precarious than the wealthiest estates. But mostly, luck plus timing plus willingness to sacrifice privacy. Hundreds of families refused to open their homes. Pride, dignity. We'd rather demolish than have tourists tramping through. They demolished. The Howards swallowed their pride in 1952. Opened the doors, let strangers in. It saved the house, but destroyed traditional aristocratic privacy. That willingness made the difference. Castle Howard survived. But what does survival actually mean? The building survived. Yes, Castle Howard stands. Dome restored externally. Gardens maintained. Magnificent. But it's not the original building Charles Howard created. What's different? 1. The dome is a replica. Rebuilt 1962 to early 1970s. Simplified internal structure, modern materials. Looks similar externally, not identical internally. Vanbrugh and Hawksmoor's original 1712 dome is gone forever. 2. Interiors changed for tourism. Rooms converted for public access.
protective ropes blocking furniture, lighting installed, necessary but can damage historic fabrics over time, climate control, necessary for conservation but alters historic atmosphere, accessibility modifications, ramps, lifts, necessary but visually intrusive, signage, interpretation panels, helpful for visitors, changes aesthetic, cumulative wear and tear, estimated hundreds of thousands of visitors annually equals damage accumulation. Carpets wear faster, replaced more frequently than in private residence. Walls need repainting constantly, oils from hands, dust, wear. Furniture deteriorates from vibration, temperature fluctuations from crowds. Floors wear, even with protective measures. The house is preserved, but it's a working, heavily used building, not a pristine time capsule. The family survived. Howard family still owns it, but they're no longer aristocrats in the traditional sense. They're professional custodians. Nicholas Howard works essentially full-time managing a complex business operation that happens to be his family's 300-year-old home. He lives modestly relative to the property's value, not in grand staterooms, not profiting significantly. He's preserved his ancestors' legacy at the cost of personal wealth compared to historic Howard family fortunes, privacy compared to any normal private residence, freedom because he can't walk away from the responsibility. The legacy survived. The Howard name is tied to Castle Howard forever. But is this what Charles Howard, the third Earl, wanted when he commissioned it in 1999? He wanted private family seat, a symbol of power and status, monument to Howard political influence, Whig architecture, symbol of permanence, family dynasty for centuries. What it became, a tourist attraction. Anyone with 20 to 25 pounds can enter. Event venue, strangers marry in the Great Hall. Filming location, fictional characters inhabit Howard family spaces. The legacy survived, but transformed utterly beyond recognition from original intent.
November 9th, 1940. The fire destroyed the dome, but it did something more profound. It forced a choice the family had been avoiding for 2 decades. Before the fire, denial. 1920s through 1930s, Castle Howard was struggling, estate taxes crushing, income declining, servant numbers dropping, but the family maintained the fiction. It's temporary. We'll get through this. Things will improve. We just need to hold on a bit longer. They sold some land, some paintings, but kept the core intact. They believed they could maintain the traditional life, private aristocratic family seat, minimal public interaction, the old way of living. This was denial. The world had changed. The old economic model was dead, but they pretended otherwise. The fire forced honesty. The fire destroyed that illusion. The dome collapsed, 20 rooms gone, 500,000 pounds in damage, $28 million today. There was no money to rebuild. World War II raged, materials rationed, labor scarce. Government had no interest in helping aristocrats rebuild private palaces. The choice became stark and unavoidable. Option 1, let it decay. Leave the dome as a ruin. Let the house slowly deteriorate from weather exposure, eventually demolish what's left. Option 2, transform everything. Accept that the old life is over, open to paying public, become tourism operators, give up privacy for preservation. Charles Howard, 11th Earl, chose transformation, but not immediately. He waited 12 years, 1940 to 1952, before opening to the public. Why the delay? He needed time to accept what he was surrendering. 12 years to grieve the loss of privacy, to accept that his children and grandchildren would live as custodians, not private aristocrats. The fire forced honesty, but honesty took 12 years to fully embrace. What the fire really destroyed? The dome was architecture, stone and timber.
What really burned was the fantasy. The fantasy that the Howard family could continue living as private aristocrats in splendid isolation. That fantasy had been dying since World War I, but the family clung to it. The fire killed it. What replaced it? Acceptance. We are custodians, not owners. We serve the house's preservation. The house doesn't serve our comfort. This is the real transformation, from owners to servants of their own ancestral home. Castle Howard teaches something profound about power, ownership, and history. You cannot truly own a historic monument. It owns you. How monuments own people. 1. Financial ownership becomes meaningless. Nicholas Howard legally owns Castle Howard through family trust structures, but practically, this pattern extends beyond Castle Howard. Any family owning a historic monument faces this. Blenheim Palace, Marlboroughs. Duke works essentially full-time managing estate operations, can't escape the responsibility. Chatsworth, Devonshires. Duke is effectively CEO of Chatsworth House Trust. His life is the estate. Highclere Castle, Carnarvon's, Downton Abbey filming location. Earl and Countess work full-time on estate operations. Tourism sustains the property. The universal pattern: you inherit a monument. The monument inherits your life. You don't enjoy it, you preserve it. You work for it. You sacrifice for it. It owns you far more than you own it. Castle Howard survived 325 years, but survival required surrendering what made it worth having in the first place. What was surrendered? Privacy. Estimated hundreds of thousands of annual visitors walk through family spaces. Much of traditional wealth. Revenue covers operational costs. No significant profit compared to historic Howard family fortunes. Substantial control. Historic preservation laws, public expectations, government oversight influence every decision. Traditional aristocratic lifestyle. From private earls living in splendor to public estate managers working full-time. Family home in traditional sense. Staterooms are for tourists and events. Family relegated to limited private apartments. Original architecture. The dome is a replica. Interiors modified for public access. Exclusivity. Anyone with 20 to 25 pounds can walk through rooms once reserved exclusively for aristocracy and invited guests. What was saved? The physical building, still standing, mostly original structure with restored dome. Family ownership, still Howard family, though future uncertain. The landscape, gardens, parkland, Temple of the Four Winds, mausoleum, all maintained. Employment, 200+ jobs sustained by estate operations. Cultural and educational value. Hundreds of thousands annually experience British architectural and social history. The Howard name remains attached to Castle Howard, ensuring historical continuity. Was it worth it? Depends entirely on what you value. If you prioritize physical preservation of architectural heritage, yes, absolutely. Cultural and educational public benefit, yes, worth it. Employment and economic value to the region, yes, justified. Historical continuity, Howard name staying attached, yes, valuable. If you prioritize family privacy and normal domestic life, no, not worth it. Traditional aristocratic wealth and lifestyle, no, terrible trade. Personal freedom and autonomy, no, too constraining. Private enjoyment of your own property, no, completely sacrificed. The Howards made their choice. They traded one set of values for another. Saved the stones, lost the traditional life, kept the name, surrendered much of the privacy, wealth, and freedom that historically came with it. Castle Howard has survived 325 years. Can it survive another 325? The building, almost certainly yes. Howard family ownership, much less certain. Threats to long-term survival. 1. Climate change. Extreme weather events, flooding, storms, temperature extremes increasingly threaten historic buildings. Heritage buildings weren't designed for current climate volatility. 2. Economic instability. Recessions reduce tourism spending. Fewer visitors equals less revenue equals deferred maintenance. Deferred maintenance compounds. Small problems become expensive disasters. 3. Changing cultural interests. Will future generations care about aristocratic history, or will interest gradually fade? 4. Succession uncertainty. What if next generation or the one after genuinely doesn't want the burden? Forced sale or national trust transfer might become necessary. 5. Rising operational costs. Maintenance costs rise with inflation. Specialized historic building skills increasingly rare and expensive. Revenue growth may not keep pace with cost increases. Opportunities for future adaptation. 1. Digital expansion. Virtual tours, online educational content, global digital engagement could generate revenue from worldwide audience unable to visit physically. 2. Hospitality evolution. Luxury hotel wing, as some estates successfully operate small luxury hotels, example Clifton, could generate substantial revenue without compromising historic areas. 3. Educational partnerships. Formal partnerships with universities for architecture and history teaching programs, conservation training, estate management education. Provides funding and ensures trained next generation of heritage professionals. 4. Environmental programs. Carbon offset credits from parkland and forests, rewilding initiatives, increasingly popular with the public, sustainable agriculture showcases, renewable energy, carefully integrated, solar panels on non-visible roofs, etc. Continued filming. Period dramas remain popular, Bridgerton, etc. Castle Howard ideal for this. Consistent filming income can be substantial. Most likely future scenarios, next 50 years. Short term, 10 to 20 years, business as usual, current operational model, family ownership, tourism-based revenue, estimated hundreds of thousands of visitors annually. Minor adaptations, digital enhancement, event expansion, but fundamentally similar to current operations. Medium term, 20 to 40 years, professional management partnership or partial national trust involvement becomes likely. Family retains legal ownership, but operational burden shifts partially or fully to professional heritage management organizations. This reduces the family's direct workload while maintaining ownership continuity. Long-term, 50 years plus, national trust transfer most probable if future generations decide full burden is unsustainable. Almost certainly not private sale, politically and socially nearly impossible, public outrage. Demolition, legally protected Grade 1 listed building, would never be permitted. Abandonment would trigger government intervention, forced preservation orders. Outcome? The building will survive, too historically and architecturally significant to allow deterioration. But as what? National trust property, most likely long-term. Continued family ownership with professional management, possible medium-term. Hybrid model, family ownership, national trust management partnership. Howard name will remain attached regardless of ownership structure. The connection is too historically significant to sever.